Good morning and welcome to Daily Red Devil for all of your latest Manchester United transfer news and talk. I hope everyone is doing well on this Friday morning. We're back with another massive show to bring you guys today. But before we jump into that, please smash a like on today's video. Let's try and see 200 likes on today's show. And also subscribe if you are new. Get involved. On the show today, we are going to be reacting and discussing a potential PSG pursuit of Marcus Rashford. Obviously, we know that Mbappé has announced that he will be leaving PSG in the summer, most likely going to Real Madrid. And PSG are apparently going to be signing 3 major players. So we'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking a bit about Dan Ashworth and giving you an update on the director of football position at Manchester United, letting you know where we're at with that. Some other bits as well to get into. And as always, guys, I invite you to have your say on all things Man United in the comment section below. And the question I have for you today is, would you sell Marcus Rashford to PSG? Let me know. I would like it if you gave more than just a yes or no. So give me a bit of reasoning. If you sold Marcus Rashford, who would you bring in instead? How much money do you think Marcus Rashford would be worth? Obviously, he's just signed a new contract, so you've got to bear that in mind. But let's start the show off with that then, just so you can get involved from the off. So, the story has been talked about for quite a while. Obviously, we know, I think it was last summer, PSG were supposedly in talks with Rashford's agent over a potential deal. Rashford then signed a new contract with Manchester United. Some people said maybe it's just Rashford trying to get more money, but then reliable journalists did come out and say that PSG were genuinely trying to sign him. This was obviously about this time last year. In the summer last year. Off the back of that, there's been more and more stories over the last 2 or 3 months saying that PSG are ultimately ready to make a new approach for Marcus Rashford. And they see him as, a replacement for Kylian Mbappé. They do. And I think it does make sense. I really, really do think it makes sense from a PSG perspective. Marcus Rashford is a massive brand. Obviously, he's not on the level of a Kylian Mbappé, but if you look around world football, Marcus Rashford is one of the biggest brands in world football, off the field, I think. He's got a massive social media following. And I know for most people they don't care about that, but PSG seem to try and buy players with big followings and players who can elevate their social media accounts. We saw them sign Lionel Messi, and then I think within 24 hours, their account went from 20 million followers to 40 million followers. They're the type of team that over the last kind of decade have really focused on the brand of player opposed to the player that actually suits a system or a player that suits the certain manager. And that's why they ultimately haven't won any Champions Leagues, is because, it's just a project where they're throwing money at superstars, putting them all in a team together and hoping that it works. And I actually think that Marcus Rashford is literally the perfect person to throw into the mix in this PSG team. I really, really do. And I could see this one happening. I could but anyway, let's read out some of the stuff that journalists have said about this. So Fabrizio Romano has come out this morning saying that PSG have already prepared their backup plan without Mbappe since December. He says there will be at least 3 major signings this summer: a top player to replace Kylian Mbappe up front, but also a top tier midfielder and a top talented centre back will join PSG. I mean, that says it all there, doesn't it? Really, if you're looking at players to replace Marcus Rashford, okay? Rafael Leao, maybe. He's an option. Marcus Rashford's an option. There isn't really any others at the very, very top of the game, is there, in that position? They're not going to sign a Vinicius Junior. They're not going to sign, I don't know, a Mohamed Salah, I doubt. I'd be very surprised. So I think that, someone of the profile of either a Rafael Leao or a Marcus Rashford would be absolutely perfect. I think Leao did just sign a brand new contract, didn't he? Yeah, so Leao's contracted until 2028. I actually think that AC Milan would want more for Rafael Leao than United would want for Marcus Rashford. I don't know why, this is just my opinion, but I just have a feeling that they would, because they know how many teams are after Rafael Leao. And to be fair, he is a couple of years younger and has got a longer contract. But I can see this one happening. But let's see what people are saying in the chat this morning. Anthony says Rashford is overrated. He's undoubtedly a talented player, but he can be lazy and selfish. I agree with you there, mate. Stephanie says, wouldn't be upset if Rashford left. Cash in on him. His team ethic isn't there, I'm sorry to say. Yeah, I agree with you, mate. I do. I think the thing with Rashford for me is that as Anthony said in the chat just now, I think he's a very, very talented player. I think he's, people who say he's rubbish, he's not rubbish. He's a very good player, and I do like Marcus Rashford. But I just think that within this side at the moment, there's a real sense of unity. And in all fairness, Marcus Rashford seems to have turned a bit of a corner the last couple of games. He's passing the ball, he's working hard, he's tracking back, and you've got to give him credit where it's due. But the point I always boil back to is, how long will that last for? It always seems to be the case where something will happen, a player starts performing for 2 or 3 matches, maybe 5 matches, and then suddenly they just stop running again. They stop tracking back. And I just think that we've had this situation with Rashford so many times. And I saw a really interesting comment on one of our other videos where someone had said, for the last 7 years, like, Rashford has only really had like 1 or 2 good seasons where he's really, really stood out. And that was obviously last year and a season, I think, a few years before that. But if you look at him consistently over the last kind of 7 years, like, he's not been consistent year on year. And I think that, Man United are in a rebuild. We're in the position now where to be able to 100% cash in on a player that's come through the youth academy, a player that will go down on the books as 100% profit, it's a very difficult thing to say no to. And in all fairness, like, maybe Rashford needs a new environment. Maybe he needs a change, and what better place to go to if you're Marcus Rashford and you think you're on the level of a Kylian Mbappé, whether he is or not, I don't know, and you go to PSG as the replacement for Mbappé. Like, what bigger ego boost is there than that? And yeah, I can see this one happening. I think it'll be one that's going to be talked about a lot over the summer. I think PSG would see it as a massive coup for them to bring in, one of the best players in the Premier League at the moment. And we'll have to keep you updated on it. But yeah, let me know in the comment section, guys. Would you sell Marcus Rashford to PSG? And also let me know how much you think would be a fair price for him. So let's have a look at the results of the poll. 84% of people watching the video live have said that they would sell Rashford to PSG. 84, so it's gone to 85% now even. 85% say yes, and 15% say no. I mean, that's mad, isn't it? I'm in that fan club as well, to be fair. I am. I'm in that camp. I think sell him personally. Cash in. If it was someone like Anthony and they were offering half of the money we paid for him, I'd probably say no. Not because I think Anthony's a good player, but because of the financial element of it. With financial fair play being so tight now, to be able to get 70, 80, 90 million profit, straight profit for a player, that would help us massively. It would help our rebuild massively. And I think you have to go and do it if you can. It's the same with people like McTominay, I think he's a good bench player. I think he's done really well this season, McTominay. I think him coming off the bench in the last 10 minutes of the games has won us probably 9 points this season, obviously against Wolves, against obviously Aston Villa the other day. Like, there's been 2 or 3 games this season where McTominay has come off the bench and won us a football match, but he isn't good enough to start every single game for me. And knowing that you could get probably 30, 40 million for McTominay, and that would go down on your books as 100% profit, like, you have to entertain those types of things. And that's why I think with Rashford, you have to entertain it, because it would be 100% profit. He's come through the youth academy. He's cost us no money. And in relation to financial fair play, it would really, really help us. Darren says we'd probably only get 40 or 50 million. Nah, I don't think so, mate. I think you'd get at least 70 million for Rashford. He's just signed a new contract. Yeah. Papa says, I predicted that PSG would sign Rashford and Sancho, 80 million for Rashford and 50 million for Sancho. Rashford is not consistent enough to make United a serious contender for the league title. I agree with you on Rashford there. I don't think PSG would go after Sancho personally, but we'll have to wait and see. Stephanie says the minimum I would take is 75 million, but whatever we get for him is pure profit and massive wages off our wage bill. Yes. David says if Marcus loses that yard of pace he's got at the moment, he'd be finished. Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point as well. Pig Teat says I think Rashford has only had 3 good seasons. Yeah, I think 2 or 3 good seasons. Darren says we need squad players, so we should keep McTominay. Yeah, look, guys, if somebody offered us 40, 50 million for McTominay, you've got to go and take it, right? But if someone's going to offer you like 5 million, 10 million, obviously you'd laugh at them and say, no, we're keeping him. I think McTominay, if he's happy to be a bench player, he's happy to come on in the last 10 or 15 minutes of a game and impact the match, I would keep him. I genuinely would. If he honestly is happy with that, I would have absolutely 0 issues with him staying, because he's not on very much money. I think he's on about 60 grand a week, which is nothing compared to, the Rashfords. I think Varane's on 350k a week. Casemiro's on 350k a week. I would have zero issues with McTominay staying at the club as an impact sub if he was happy with that, and if we never saw him starting matches, because his impact starting a game, in my opinion, is zero. I think he negatively impacts the team. I think he doesn't know how to play that CDM position. I think he's much better further up the pitch. And in fact, whenever McTominay starts a game, he ends up playing in Højlund's position, and then it just leaves our midfield completely open. Whereas, if you've got 10 minutes left of a game and you need a goal, and you stick McTominay further up the pitch, he gets you goals, and I rate him for that, So yeah, as long as he's happy with what, his position is within this team, which is, in my opinion, an impact bench player, then I would keep him personally. And in all fairness, I think McTominay would be happy with that, because he still is making an impact. He's still involved, he's still contributing. He's still playing for the biggest club in England, one of the biggest clubs in the world. Like, if he was to leave United, he's going to go to like a West Ham, to a Newcastle. He's going to go to realistically a smaller club. And maybe he would then become a first-team player who would start every single game. But I have a feeling that McTominay's happy with where he is at the moment. I know people say, no player's happy with being on the bench, but for him to have scored 7 goals in the Premier League this season, pretty much all of them coming off the bench, he's our highest goal scorer in the Premier League. Like, he's contributing massively, and you have to respect him for that. What's this here? I'm only just... When did this story come out? I completely missed this. That apparently Isaac Hansen Aaron has apparently agreed to join Werder Bremen on a permanent deal. Oh, maybe we did talk about this. We did talk about this. I think I just saw it pop up on my Twitter, and I was like thinking, have I seen this before? But I have, yeah. So forgive me there. I've got a bit confused. Right, let's talk a little bit about Dan Ashworth then, shall we, quickly? Everyone who's just joined, by the way, please smash a like on the video. Let's try and see 200 likes today. If everybody who's watching the video gives it a like, we'll hit that target. So there's no reason not to do it. It doesn't cost any money. Give the video a like, and let's see how many likes we end up on. I will get a new poll going as well in a minute. So let's talk a little bit about Dan Ashworth. The story coming out this morning is that the appointment of Dan Ashworth is imminent. Yeah, imminent. Apparently, Man United and Newcastle are currently negotiating the terms of his exit. And Eddie Howe has even been talking about it in his press conference. Eddie Howe was asked whether Dan Ashworth has told him if he wants to stay at Newcastle. And Eddie Howe says, no, he hasn't said that. He says, whatever happens, we want a quick resolution. So, yeah. Eddie Howe is acknowledging that Dan Ashworth is, of interest to Man United. Obviously, Fabrizio Romano has said that Dan Ashworth has said yes to Manchester United. I think Eddie Howe, I've just watched his press conference. He says there's been no contact, but news stories suggest something is going to happen. So Dan Ashworth is obviously on the way out of the door of Newcastle. It just depends on how long his gardening leave is. If anybody doesn't know what that means, effectively, when you leave a company or a football team that are, in the same league, the team that they're leaving can put something called a gardening leave in, which will effectively mean that the person, so Dan Ashworth in this case, would not be able to start working at the new club for a period of time. Man United are trying to negotiate terms so he can start immediately, but as a result of that, they will have to pay compensation to Newcastle. The figure being mentioned this morning is somewhere around £10 million, which, when you actually break it down, £10 million and he could start next week, I think that's a great bit of business. I know it seems a little bit strange, but football's gone crazy, isn't it? Who was the manager a couple of seasons ago that somebody paid like 30 million for? Obviously, I know Chelsea paid a crazy amount of money for Graham Potter, didn't they? Let's have a look how much Chelsea paid for Graham Potter. So Chelsea paid Brighton £21.5 million to sign Graham Potter because ultimately he was in a contract, and then they sacked him after 6 months. I mean, that's crazy, isn't it? And then after the 6 months that he was there, when they sacked him, they had to pay him £13 million in compensation for wages. So Chelsea effectively paid Brighton £21.5 million. to bring Graham Potter to Chelsea, kept him for 6 months, sacked him, and then had to give Graham Potter 13 million. Like, this is just the way football's gone now. You know, managers are being bought, and it's the same situation here. Manchester United are effectively saying Dan Ashworth is the director of football we want. He's in a contract. We'll buy him out of his contract. It's a strange old world, isn't it? When you kind of think about it, but yeah. Pig Teat says I would be selling Anthony before Rashford. The thing is, mate, I agree with you, right? But if you actually think about it logically, who's a better player, Rashford or Anthony? Rashford, 100%. But the reason why selling Anthony is pointless is because on our books, Anthony is a 95 million euro player. That's what we bought him for, okay? I think we've only paid about 20 million euros of that 95. We're paying it installments every year to Ajax. If we were to go and sell Anthony in the summer for, say, 40, 50 million, that would then go down on our financial fair play as a loss of 45 million euros, okay? And you're only allowed to lose a certain amount of money within a certain amount of time. Otherwise, you saw what happened to Everton. They got a massive point deduction because of losing too much money in a set period of time. So selling Anthony, yes, it would solve the issue of us not liking him and not thinking he's very good. But from a financial perspective, selling Anthony would make zero sense. Like loaning him out would make more sense. Keeping him would make more sense, at least for the time being, until we've paid off some more of his salary. His transfer fee. Dean says 100 million and no less for Rashford. Reinvest that into a younger, hungrier winger, left or right, as Garnacho can play either. I like that Williams kid from Bilbao. Yeah, he's a decent player. Nico Williams, very, very good. I think he did just sign a new contract, but I guess that doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things. See what else people are saying in the chat quickly. Comeback Kings is saying I'd sell Anthony for 50 million. Like, the thing is, you have to look back on what I just said then. If you sell Anthony for 50 million, it doesn't help our financial situation. It doesn't. In fact, it actually negatively impacts our financial situation because it means we've lost more money. So yeah, I don't think Anthony will be going anywhere. But I'm going to wrap the video up here, guys. I hope everyone has enjoyed today's show. Please do smash a like on the video before you go. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll speak to you all a bit later.